Namaste, my name is Naveen Bale, and in this video, I will be explaining why I think the Sri Yantra is a symbolic representation of an atom. If this is true, it would make the Sri Yantra the first known depiction of an atom in human history. To summarize my arguments, I believe the central bindu is the nucleus of an atom, the interlocking triangles, which mean manifested energy, are the discrete energy levels of an atom, the 43 secondary triangles are electrons, and the outer BHUPURA, which means north, south, east, and west, represents the space in which atoms reside. The central claim that I'm making in this video is that the ancient Indians, thousands of years ago, were aware of the structure of the atom and symbolically depicted it through the geometrical structure of the Sri Yantra. I will also talk about how the relationship between yantras and mantras, which are sounds, is directly related to the equivalence of atoms and electromagnetic radiation, or in other words, the equivalence of mass and energy. Look, these are extraordinary claims, and extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that is what this video is about. So we're going to take this step by step and do an in-depth analysis of the Sri Yantra to evaluate if it actually does represent an atom. The video will be divided into three sections. First, we will understand how and why we use symbols in the modern age to depict atoms. Next, we're going to evaluate the Sri Yantra based on two criteria, which it has to satisfy in order to qualify as a symbol of an atom. And at the very end, I'm going to explain how the ancients communicated the equivalence of mass and energy thousands of years before Einstein's equation E is equal to mc squared. This is one of many rediscoveries I've made. If you want to follow my journey as I publish my original research, then please subscribe to this channel. And if you have any questions, comment below or send me an email. With that, let's get started. First, let's talk about how we use symbols to depict atoms today. The reason we use symbols in the first place is because atoms are so small, they're impossible to see with our own two eyes. So instead, we expand its size by 100 million times. We project its 3D structure onto a 2D plane. And then we add and subtract different features from our current understanding of atoms to make it easier to understand and communicate. The goal of modern symbols of atoms is not to optimize for accuracy. Rather, it's to optimize for clarity and communication. If the goal was accuracy, the nucleus would be 100,000 times smaller than the actual atom. Instead, the creators of modern symbols inflate the nucleus so that it's actually visible. If the goal was accuracy, then the symbols of atoms wouldn't actually have any colors to them. If the goal was accuracy, then every symbol of an atom would be depicted using the quantum mechanical model. Instead, we still use the outdated Rutherford model and the outdated Bohr model because it's easier to draw and everyone understands it. The point is, symbols of atoms focus on capturing a subset of properties while abstracting away others. And of course, there's a lot of artistic leeway in how the atom is symbolically depicted. But the question remains, if all these symbols are actually inaccurate, why are they considered symbols of atoms in the first place? And what makes any random diagram with a dot and circles around it not a symbolic depiction of an atom? To answer this, we're going to create a criteria with two requirements in order for the Sri Yantra to be considered a symbolic depiction of an atom. First, there should be a clear intention by the creators of the symbol to depict atoms. And two, the symbol should capture key visual characteristics of actual atoms. And after analyzing modern symbols of atoms, this generally comes down to a minimum of three main properties. Number one, there's a nucleus at the center of the structure. Two, it depicts discrete energy levels and or electrons to make space for the Rutherford model. And number three, it should be circular in shape. Now, we're going to use this standard that we've created to evaluate if the Sri Yantra can be considered a symbolic representation of an atom. Let's start with the first criteria. Is there a clear intention by the creators of the Sri Yantra to depict atoms? To answer this, let's take a look at what the Sri Yantra is known to represent in different interpretations. Number one, it's a representation of the female goddess LALITA TRIPURA SUNDARI. Number two, on a cosmic level, it represents the entire cosmos. Number three, on a smaller scale, it represents the human body and the chakras within us. Even though these may seem as different, unrelated ways of interpreting the Sri Yantra, we can make sense of it all using Samkhya Philosophy, one of the 6 schools of Hinduism. Here, while the masculine principle Purusha means pure consciousness, the feminine principle Prakriti means energy, matter, and space. The Sri Yantra's association with the female deity LALITA, TRIPURA, SUNDARI directly relates it to the material world, which is composed of energy, matter, and space. And this can be interpreted in different scales and contexts. On the cosmic level, the Sri Yantra represents the totality of space, matter, and energy that our entire universe is made of. In the same way that we start drawing the Sri Yantra with a BINDU, the universe also originates from a single point, called a singularity. On a human level, the material nature of the Sri Yantra is our physical body, and the goal is to realize our existence as only the BINDU, which means pure consciousness. So we move into the Sri Yantra from the outer 4 gates, through the chakras, and eventually arrive at a state of moksha. There are many more interpretations, and this is by no means a coincidence. The Sri Yantra was designed to encrypt diverse information into one symbol, so that only one symbol was needed to be remembered for all of the information to survive through time. I believe this flexibility of interpretations was meant to be extrapolated to the atomic level, because on the atomic level, atoms exist within space. Atoms combine to construct matter, and atoms are equivalent to energy, a topic which we will further explore in the last section of this video. To summarize, I believe the Sri Yantra's association with the feminine principle of energy, matter, space, in addition to its flexibility of interpretation across different scales, supports the idea that the Sri Yantra was intended to depict atoms. If it were up to me, I would go back in time and ask the creators of the Sri Yantra if it was intended to depict atoms, but unfortunately we can't. We rely on fragments of incomplete information that may have decayed over thousands of years. But even then, there is still a clear intention by the creators to depict atoms. Next, coming to the good part, let's evaluate if the Sri Yantra satisfies the criteria of visual properties. Remember, it should have a nucleus, discrete energy levels, and be circular in nature. First, let's talk about the nucleus. The nucleus of an atom is composed of neutrons and protons and is responsible for almost 100% of the atom's mass. It's 100,000 times smaller than the diameter of an atom and is located at the very center of the structure. Because of its positive charge, it creates an electromagnetic force that attracts the negatively charged electrons to keep the atom together as one. In the context of the Sri Yantra, I believe the BINDU is the nucleus, and I have 3 reasons for saying this. First, it's located at the center of the Sri Yantra, just like the nucleus is located at the center of an atom. Second, the BINDU literally means point or dot in Sanskrit. I think the idea of depicting the center as a small point specifically relates to the miniature size of the nucleus relative to the rest of the atom. Third, not only is the BINDU a small central point, it is also the focal point around which the entire Sri Yantra is created. In fact, drawing the Sri Yantra always starts with marking the central BINDU first. In my view, this functional property of being the focal point relates to the nucleus's role in holding the structure of an atom together as one. The second property that the Sri Yantra should contain in order for us to consider it a valid symbolic representation of an atom is discrete energy levels. In the Bohr model, these energy levels were depicted as distinct electron shells, which depict the path an electron orbits around the nucleus. Higher energy levels are located further away from the nucleus and contain a higher capacity of electrons. But the quantum mechanical model, however, showed that while discrete energy levels do in fact exist, it's not as simple as electrons orbiting around the nucleus like planets orbit around the sun. Instead, it depicted these discrete energy levels in distinct shapes called atomic orbitals. These atomic orbitals are derived mathematically and depict the probability distribution of the location of an electron relative to the nucleus. They have different shapes for each discrete energy level, which overlap with each other in highly intricate structure. The Sri Yantra depicts these discrete energy levels in 2 ways. First, with the 9 interlocking triangles, and second, with the 2 layers of lotus petals. The 9 triangles are composed of 4 upward-pointing Shiva triangles and, more importantly, 5 downward-pointing Shakti triangles. In Sanskrit, Shakti literally means energy, And since it's feminine, it also relates to the Samkhya principle of Prakriti. The layered structure of these 5 Shakti triangles can be interpreted as 5 discrete energy levels. But then you may be wondering, what about the 4 Shiva triangles? And that's a very important question to ask. We will answer it using Samkhya philosophy. According to Samkhya, when Shakti is detached from Shiva or Purusha, it's said to be in an unmanifested form. However, when Shakti interacts with Shiva, it manifests into reality to create manifested energy. Therefore, the interlocking nature of the 5 Shakti triangles and the 4 Shiva triangles represent manifested energy. In my view, this layered structure of manifested energy directly represents the layers of discrete energy level. And if we were to compare it with the Bohr model, each of these 9 interlocking triangles enclose the central bindu, just like the Bohr's model's discrete energy levels encircle the central nucleus. This brings us to the second way in which the Sri Yantra depicts discrete energy levels, the 2 layers of lotus petals. At face value, the idea of depicting atoms with a flower-like structure is not new. The outline of the Rutherford model has a clear petal-like shape. But here, I believe the 2 layers of lotus petals are visually similar to the atomic orbitals of the quantum mechanical model, which have different shapes based on their energy levels. Many of these atomic orbitals have a dumbbell shape, which can be seen as 2 petals connecting to each other with a more 3D and rounded structure. And just like the quantum mechanical model, the petals of the Sri Yantra surround the central bindu in the same way that atomic orbitals surround the nucleus. The layered structure of lotus petals is also very similar to the overlapping nature of discrete energy levels. So overall, we've discussed 2 features of the Sri Yantra that relate to discrete energy levels. Number 1, the 9 interlocking triangles and how they relate to the layers of manifested energy. Number 2, the 2 layers of lotus petals depicting atomic orbitals like the quantum mechanical model. But there's one more feature, and this is my favorite one. Because it not only describes discrete energy levels, it also depicts the presence of electrons. Here it is. When the 9 primary triangles interlock, it creates 43 secondary triangles, which are organized in 5 distinct layers. I believe these 43 secondary triangles are electrons, and I say this for 4 reasons. 1, they're organized in 5 distinct layers around the central bindu, similar to the layered structure of discrete energy levels around the central nucleus. This is just like the 5 Shakti triangles. Number 2, there is an ascending capacity of triangles in the 5 layers further away from the bindu, just like there is an ascending capacity of electrons in the energy levels the further the layers go away from the nucleus. Number 3, the secondary triangles are organized in the 1, 8, 10, 10, 14 sequence. By contrast, electron shells have a maximum capacity of 2, 8, 18, 32, 50 triangles. So while it's by no means an exact match, the first 2 triangles are a little bit similar. 4, with the exception of the first layer, the average size of triangles increases in layers away from the bindu, similar to how the energy levels of electrons increases the further away the discrete energy level is from the nucleus. So, those are the 4 reasons why I think the 43 secondary triangles depict both discrete energy levels and electrons. What's interesting is that if you apply this type of analysis to the 2 layers of lotus petals, you realize an alternative explanation for the lotus petals is depicting electrons themselves. It generally aligns with each of these 4 reasons for why the secondary triangles are electrons. Moving on, let's talk about the third visual property in our criteria, the circular shape of an atom. Now, at face value, the Sri Yantra has a square-like structure, not a circular one. But here's the thing. Maybe not all of the Sri Yantra is associated with the actual atom. Maybe it's just the inner circular region. I say this because it's well established that the outer BHUPURA means the 4 cardinal directions of space. It is the space in which the 3 concentric circles, the 2 lotus petals, the 9 interlocking triangles, and the bindu reside. The BHUPURA represents the 3-dimensional space in which atoms reside. When you look at it this way, the Sri Yantra's association with matter, space, and energy starts to make even more sense. And this brings us to the best part of the video. If the outer BHUPURA is space and the inner circular structure specifically represents matter, then what is energy? Where is the concept of energy in the symbolic depiction of the atom? On the one hand, you can say only the BINDU is matter, because the nucleus contains almost all of the mass, and the area between the BINDU and BHUPURA, like the interlocking Shiva and Shakti triangles, are energy because in physics, they are literally energy constrained to space. But I believe the answer is a bit more complicated than that. I think the entire circular structure within the Sri Yantra is specifically matter, and the practice of using mantras alongside yantras demonstrates how mantras are auditory symbols of energy, the missing piece in our puzzle. With this, I introduce you to another very big discovery that shows that mantras are auditory symbols of electromagnetic radiation. To understand this, we need to look at Einstein's equation E is equal to mc squared, where he basically states that mass is equivalent to energy. Here, while mass relates to the atoms, energy specifically describes electromagnetic radiation. Electromagnetic radiation are these photons which don't have mass and travel at the speed of light. Depending on its frequency, it carries a specific amount of energy. Visible light has a specific frequency and carries a certain amount of energy. If this frequency is increased, then the wave would become an ultraviolet ray, X-ray, or gamma rays. If the frequency reduced from visible light, it would become infrared, microwaves, or radio waves. Here, the frequency is directly correlated with the amount of energy that's carried, which is described by Planck's equation, E is equal to hf. Now, when you look at the Sri Yantra itself, these waves of electromagnetic radiation aren't depicted anywhere. But here's the thing. When you look at how the Sri Yantra is used in Hinduism, you start to realize that the Sri Yantra is not used in isolation. Yantras, which are physical objects, are used together with mantras, these sounds that have great significance in Hinduism. Mantras are the sound of Om, the cosmic sound of our universe. Mantras are the Vedas themselves. Mantras are what pujaris recite in temples and yogis repeat during japa yoga. In fact, coming to the main point of this section, it is said that by chanting a mantra, you can visualize the yantra itself. The yantra can appear before you while your two eyes are closed. The essence of a yantra can settle upon your third eye. This practice of visualizing yantras by chanting mantras shows the equivalence of atoms and electromagnetic radiation, the equivalence of mass and energy, the equivalence of science and religion. In my view, this proximal relationship between yantras and mantras, which is prevalent across Hinduism, symbolically represents what Einstein described in his equation E is equal to mc squared. The idea that energy can be converted into mass and mass can be converted into energy, and by no means is this a spurious correlation. In the same way that a yantra is a visual symbol of an atom that captures only a subset of properties like the nucleus, discrete energy levels, and its circular shape, a mantra is an auditory symbol of electromagnetic radiation, as it captures a subset of properties while emitting and abstracting away others. To be specific, mantras have a wave-like behavior, just like electromagnetic radiation has a wave-like behavior. Mantras can travel through air, just like electromagnetic radiation can travel through air. Mantras are carriers of energy, similar to how electromagnetic radiation is a carrier of energy. And just so that we're all looking at this objectively and we're all on the same page, the idea of using sound as a symbol for electromagnetic radiation is still in practice today. Look at the peace bell in Hiroshima Peace Memorial Park in Japan. Here, there's an atom engraved onto the bell. And when it's impacted, this atom creates a magnificent sound. This function is meant to show how physical atoms, which have mass, can be converted into energy in the form of electromagnetic radiation. Because that's what happened when the atomic bomb was set off. Energy was released from an atom. Mass was converted into energy. A yantra became a mantra. But coming back to the Sri Yantra, when you look deeper into how mantras are used in Hinduism, there is a clear as day connection with the processes involving electromagnetic radiation and atoms. Number one, the idea of chanting mantras in order to visualize a yantra during meditation relates to the equivalence of the energy of electromagnetic radiation and the mass of atoms. Number two, The reason why different mantras are believed to carry different types of energy relates specifically to how electromagnetic radiation with different frequencies literally contain different amounts of energy because of Planck's equation E is equal to hf. 3. And this is where things get really interesting. The concept of chanting mantras in order to energize a yantra specifically relates to how electromagnetic radiation can energize an atom through the photoexcitation of electrons. Let me explain. When electromagnetic radiation travels at the speed of light and impacts an electron, the electron can absorb this energy and become energized. The energized electron can then move from a lower energy level to a higher energy level, energizing the atom overall. This absorption of electromagnetic radiation and the photoexcitation of electrons is just like how the sounds of mantras can energize and activate a yantra. The mantra is the symbolic vibration which travels through air and impacts a physical yantra. When the yantra absorbs the energy from a mantra, it becomes activated. The transfer of energy from mantras to yantras is equivalent to the transfer of energy from electromagnetic radiation to matter. And when you take this concept and look deeper into Hinduism, the idea of relating sounds with matter is everywhere. It's the reason we chant specific mantras in temples. It's the reason we have a Pran Pratishtha ceremony. The idea is to energize a physical object and imbue them with energy with the sounds of mantras, the sounds of electromagnetic radiation. Om is the cosmic sound because electromagnetic radiation travels through the cosmos and has a frequency just like sound does. And the Vedas are this primordial source of all knowledge because electromagnetic radiation is the source of all creation. My friends, this is what Sanatana Dharma means on a cosmic scale. It is the eternal order of physics, the fundamental laws of our universe, the structure of an atom, the nature of electromagnetic radiation. I am claiming in this video that these fundamental laws were known thousands of years before today, thousands of years before the advent of modern physics, thousands of years before the Rutherford model or the Bohr model or the quantum mechanical model. I am claiming the ancients had knowledge about the equivalence of mass and energy thousands of years before Einstein's equation E is equal to mc squared. These are eternal concepts of physics that have existed forever, long before the modern age. And though the ancients may not have characterized the mathematics behind these discoveries the same way that modern physicists do so elegantly, they did capture the core essence of physics. And they took their knowledge and communicated it with metaphors and symbols and rituals so that humanity never forgets this cosmic truth, the Sanatana Dharma of our universe, so that it survives through time and becomes eternal in humanity's collective memory. I want to end this video by concluding our argument that the circular region within the Sri Yantra specifically depicts the property of matter. From the Samkhya perspective, we've established that LALITA, TRIPURA, SUNDARI relates to matter, space, and energy. And separately, we know that devotion to LALITA, TRIPURA, SUNDARI involves using both mantras and yantras. When you match up these facts together, you realize energy is depicted with mantras because they represent electromagnetic radiation. Space is depicted with the outer BHUPURA of the Sri Yantra. And matter is depicted specifically with the circular region within the Sri Yantra, as it represents the atoms which combine to form matter, the atoms which exist within space, and the atoms which are energized by electromagnetic radiation. With that, I'd like to formally present to you the Yantra model of the atom and the mantra model of electromagnetic radiation. This is the first of many rediscoveries I've made. So if you want to follow my journey and learn more about the ancient future, please subscribe to this channel. Namaste. Thank you.